View this video from the playlist to see the complete video content.
In this chapter, I would like to discuss three things, and the three things are related to tension adjustment. So I would like to discuss the upper thread tension, the presser foot tension, and the bobbin case tension, which controls the tension on the lower thread. But before we discuss tension, I want to have you reference your guidebook in the setup section where we talk about matching needle to thread, because setting proper thread tension really should only be done when you are using the appropriate thread and needle combination. And basically, what that boils down to is making sure that the eye of the needle is appropriately large for the diameter of the thread so that it moves freely through the eye of the needle to create a proper stitch, and also that the hole that is created in your fabric is large enough that it allows for appropriate tensioning of the thread. So instead of boring you with the details of what needle fits what thread, we have lots of references at Sailrite, not just your guidebook, but it's in the Sailrite catalog and it's on the website as well. And if you need help, you can call us at Sailrite directly. So the next thing we're going to talk about, upper thread tension. We believe at Sailrite that the best way to set thread tension is always to set it in 2 layers of the material that you will be sewing. In this case, it's again our marine grade sunbrella, but it doesn't matter whether we're talking about a light home fabric or a heavy Dacron sailcloth. Always set your tension in 2 layers, and your tension then should hold, regardless of the number of layers, in that same material. To discuss how tension works, I'm going to remove the tension knob again by wiggling and pulling the outer decorative cover knob off and set it aside so that you can see the inner knob and its relationship to the threaded post that it is threaded upon. Notice that right now it is pretty close to flush with the end of the post. So we are going to start by loosening this so that the knob is essentially so loose that when I have my presser foot down, that there's very little tension on these plates. And I'm almost going to back it off all the way. If it comes off, no problem, I just thread it back on. But notice there, I don't have much tension on the plates. That knob is really loose. Now I'll lift my presser foot, and I'm going to put my fabric under, and I think what we're going to do is we're going to sew roughly 1-inch segments, and then we're going to make adjustments to this knob so you can see what it looks like to have too little upper tension and then to go all the way to too much upper tension. So let's start here. Again, we'll trap our threads. Sew about 1 inch. Now I'm going to make an adjustment of 1 full turn. So there's a 1/2 turn. Let's actually go 1/2 turns. Another inch, go a 1/2 turn, another inch, 1/2 turn, another inch or so, 1/2 turn. Now we're going to have to turn, so I'm going to bury my needle. And let's keep going. And oh yeah, we're getting what we want, and we'll discuss that here in a second. So we'll do a 1/2 turn. Another 1/2 turn, another, very. Not sure if we made another 1/2 turn, but we'll make another one there. Okay, now we're starting to get fairly tight because you can start to see the post protruding beyond the end of the knob. And we'll finish out this run here. All right, let's see if we've got what we want to show. Yes, we definitely do. Okay, so let's turn this over. And you can see where I started, where the plates were really loose, I have no tension whatsoever. So my knots aren't being pulled up to the top. In fact, I have large loops on the bottom side. Now I start to increase the tension, and all of a sudden I'm looking like I have a straight string on the bottom, but you can clearly see the knots on the bottom side of the fabric, and indeed I can even feel them. And that goes on for quite a while here, for several changes. About the time I start to get up into here, the knots are starting to be pulled into the fabric, and if we look on the other side of the fabric, we should indeed see that you can't see the knots from the top, but as I continue to move on, all of a sudden, as I'm tightening, now I can start to see the knots pulling through on the top side of the fabric. And here at the end, I can even feel the knots pulled up to the top, and you can definitely see they're very pronounced. So basically, in that mid-range, between probably here and here, was where we were getting our best stitch quality. It's okay to see the knot a little bit on the underside of the fabric. You definitely don't want to see the knot on the top side of the fabric, because that can result in stitch puckering, or related to just tension, where the fabric actually gets gathered a little bit by too tight of a stitch. So your best bet is always to have a little bit of the knot showing on the bottom. And where we were with that setting was roughly here. And if I go back and I sew a little bit, we can verify that that looks good. I can see a little bit of the knot on the top there, a little bit of the knot on the bottom. I'd actually want to back that off just a little bit more to put a little more of the knot on the bottom. Okay, so I can't really see the knots here, and I can see a bit of the knot there. That's really pretty good tension, maybe just a little bit more clockwise to tighten it up a little bit. And now, even when I fold this into, you know, an 8-layer chunk of material, I am going to be able to expect a good high quality stitch, both top and bottom, because as I said before, once you set the stitch in 2 layers, you can expect it to hold in multiple layers of that same needle thread combination with the same fabric. And that is a very good way to set your tension on a sewing machine, although I have to admit most people don't start super loose. I just wanted you to see how it works so that you know the full extent of the range of the upper tension assembly. Most people start with it about halfway threaded in and then make adjustments counterclockwise or clockwise until they reach that perfect stitch. And this is exactly the same on the blue machine as it is on the red LS1 machine. I'm going to put our cover knob on just because the machine looks nice with it in place, but you don't have to sew with that in place, as is obvious by what we just did. And by the way, I ran out of bobbin thread when I finished that off. You know you run out of bobbin thread when you're sewing along and all of a sudden you're getting a straight top string but no stitches formed. And when I pulled this fabric out, I noticed, oh, yep, I don't have any bobbin thread anymore. So fortunately, our very next chapter is winding a bobbin. But before we get to that, let's finish on tension adjustments. And our next point was on the presser foot tension. Presser foot tension is simply a knob that can be twisted clockwise and counterclockwise. And there's a big coil spring in here. And that spring controls how much resistance is down on the foot against the feed dogs and the fabric. So obviously more pressure you have clamping the material down gives you more pulling power to pull the material through. Plus, it keeps the needle from going down into the fabric and being captured by all that resistance of a tight, dense fabric and then pulling the fabric up with the needle because of that resistance. If you don't have enough spring pressure down on the fabric, the needle can actually pull the fabric up and result in a skip stitch. So if you're sewing something extremely heavy and dense and you're skipping stitches, one of the things you should look at is increasing the tension on this knob. However, if you're not having that problem, it's better for the machine's functioning to have this knob be lighter in nature as opposed to too heavy. So we really recommend that you don't adjust this unless you're having a problem that requires it. And indeed, if you're sewing lighter fabric for home sewing or soft spongy materials, or you're doing quilting or whatnot, you may even want to decrease the tension on this in order just to make life easier for the sewing machine so that it doesn't have to work so hard. So that's the presser foot adjustment. Not what I would consider to be a super critical adjustment, but it's one that you should know about. Our final tension adjustment is related to our now empty bobbin, and I'm going to pull the bobbin case out. We talked about this a little bit earlier by lifting the lever and pulling the whole case out. Now, if I hold the lever, the bobbin won't come out. If I release the lever, the bobbin will pop right out. So you can see our empty bobbin here. But this isn't what we want to talk about yet. What we want to talk about is this particular screw on the bobbin case. This screw, when turned clockwise, increases the pressure down on this leaf spring, which is what applies pressure to the thread on the underside of the machine. Turning it counterclockwise decreases the amount of pressure on the spring, thus decreasing the amount of tension on the lower thread. This is the secondary adjustment when compared to the upper tension assembly. This should always be adjusted first in order to get a proper stitch. But in some cases, if you can't get what you want with the full range of adjustment on the tension assembly, you have to come back to the bobbin case and you have to adjust that screw. It's a very rare thing to do, but when you do need to do it, refer to your guidebook and it will help you with directions on when you should adjust this screw in order to tighten or decrease tension on the bobbin thread. So those are the 3 tension adjustments on the Ultrafeed sewing machine, and again, all 3 of these are the same between both the LS1 and the LSZ Ultrafeed sewing machine. And now we'll move on to winding a bobbin.